Let's start with the doctors whose treatments were just dumb, and slowly work our way toward the ones whose bad science is still killing people right now. Because if there's one thing more dangerous than a disease, it's a confident idiot in a white coat with a miracle cure and a price tag. Tonight, we're counting down the deadliest quack doctors in history. The frauds, fanatics, and fake geniuses whose medicine ruined lives, wrecked bodies, and sometimes changed history. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the phrase, "Trust me, I did my own research," should make you more nervous than a medieval surgery table. Number 8. The Barber-Surgeons and the Bloodletting Craze. Let's ease into this. Not every dangerous doctor thought they were a villain. Some were just doing what everyone else was doing. It's the Middle Ages. You walk down a street in Europe and see a familiar sign, a red and white striped pole. Today that means barber. Back then, it meant haircuts, shaves, teeth pulled out with pliers, dislocated shoulders yanked back into place, and, of course, bloodletting. You go in for a trim and the barber hits you with, "You look pale. We should probably open a vein." Bloodletting was the treatment. Fever? Take some blood. Headache? Take some blood. Pregnancy problems? Depression? Bad vibes from the moon? Take some blood. The logic was simple and horribly wrong. Your body has humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile. If you're sick, they're imbalanced. So, drain some blood until you feel better. If you didn't feel better, clearly you needed more blood taken. People with infections, pneumonia, plague, childbirth complications, all sent to the barber for a good draining. You'd sit in a chair, arm out, and the barber would slice your vein and let the blood run into a bowl. No gloves, no sterilization, same tools used on everyone. Sometimes patients fainted. Sometimes they died. Sometimes they walked out weaker than when they came in, which, shockingly, is not ideal when your body is trying to fight disease. But here's the disturbing part. This wasn't considered quack at the time. This was standard care. Everyone believed in it. Rich, poor, kings, priests. Even centuries later, famous figures like George Washington were bled heavily while sick and died shortly after. So why start our list here? Because it shows the pattern you'll see over and over. A bad medical idea, backed by authority and tradition, applied to everyone, and only questioned after it killed countless people. And as bad as that was, at least your barber surgeon wasn't putting radioactive poison in your water bottle. Number 7. The miracle tonic showman. Fast forward to the 19th century. Science is advancing. Microscopes exist. Germs are starting to be a thing people talk about, but so are traveling medicine shows. You're in a dusty frontier town. A wagon rolls in with painted signs. Dr. Miracle's elixir cures all ailments. From gout to gloom, a man in a top hat jumps onto a crate. Do you suffer from fatigue? Low spirits? Indigestion? Ugly face? Step right up. 1 bottle, $1, and your problems will evaporate like sadness in the sunshine. The crowd laughs. The band plays. A random woman steps up, claiming she couldn't walk until she drank the stuff. She is, of course, on payroll. These tonics promised everything. More energy, better digestion, cure for female troubles, eternal youth, and sometimes spiritual enlightenment. Why not? So what was actually in them? Alcohol. A lot of alcohol. Opiates, cocaine, chloroform, and various fun things like mercury, arsenic, or industrial solvents. If it numbed pain, made you feel buzzed, or did anything noticeable, somebody bottled it and called it medicine. Parents gave soothing syrups to their babies, which were laced with morphine and alcohol to make them stop crying. Spoiler. Yes, some of those babies stopped crying forever. The quack doctor's favorite trick was confusion. Use long medical-sounding words. Slap scientific on the label. Quote a few fake testimonials. Add a cross or a Latin phrase for respectability. Then vanish into the next town when people started noticing their cure was killing more folks than it helped. It's easy to laugh at this now, until you open social media and see people selling detox drops and magic supplements with the exact same marketing playbook. But our next entry took the phrase glowing reviews way too literally. Number 6. William J. A. Bailey. Drink your radium. Now, we're in the early 1900s, during a glorious phase of science where humans discovered radiation and immediately try to drink it, rub it on their faces, and sleep with it under their pillows. Enter William J. A. Bailey. He called himself doctor. He wasn't. Bailey sold a product called Radithor. Triple distilled water, guaranteed radioactive small glass bottles marketed as health tonics. He claimed radium-infused water would boost energy, cure impotence, fix arthritis, rejuvenate the body, and probably make you better at golf. Rich businessmen and athletes loved it. They ordered crates, drank it daily, and bragged about their glow. One of his most famous customers was Eben Byers, a wealthy American socialite and athlete. This guy loved Radithor so much, he downed over 1,000 bottles. He felt fantastic. For a while, then his teeth started falling out. His jawbone began to rot. He developed agonizing pain as radiation silently ate his bones from the inside. By the time doctors realized Radithor was literally dissolving him, it was too late. The final medical report described his skull as looking like Swiss cheese. Bailey's response? He denied everything, of course. Kept advertising. Kept selling radium products. No remorse. Just profit. He didn't personally stab anyone or starve them. He just convinced people to willingly drink radioactive death because the label said health. And if you think that is peak insanity, our next doctor looked at human starvation and said, wait, what if I market this as a treatment? Number 5. Linda Hazard, the starvation doctor. Imagine going to a health retreat. You're promised detox, healing, clarity, a reset for your body. You arrive at a peaceful house in the woods of Washington State in the early 1900s. The woman in charge introduces herself as Dr. Linda Hazard. She wears the title proudly. She is not, technically, a medical doctor, but she is about to take control of your entire life. Her cure for nearly every illness? Starvation. At her remote clinic, cheerfully nicknamed later by locals as Starvation Heights, patients were put on extreme fasting regimens. Spoonfuls of strained broth, maybe twice a day. Occasional tiny servings of tomato juice or orange juice. Hours-long enemas massages that were more like violent pummeling. You complain you're dizzy and weak? That's toxins leaving your body? You're losing weight rapidly? That means the cure is working. You say you're starving? Linda Hazard says, that's just your diseased appetite talking. Over time, patients couldn't walk, couldn't sit up, could barely speak. Many died on the property, officially from their underlying illness. Conveniently, a suspicious number of them changed their wills before dying, leaving money and possessions to Hazard. If this sounds like a cult, that's because it basically was. One of the most infamous cases involved the Williamson sisters, British heiresses who came to her clinic to restore their health. One sister died weighing less than many children. The other was found barely alive, reduced to skin and bone, rescued only when relatives arrived from England and dragged her out. Hazard eventually was put on trial, convicted of manslaughter, served a short sentence, and then went right back to running health retreats. The terrifying part is not just what she did, but how many people voluntarily submitted to it because they trusted her authority. She weaponized patients' desperation and their belief in natural healing into a slow, profitable death. And as wild as starvation spa medicine sounds, our next doctor sold something even more insane. Goat testicles. Number 4. John R. Brinkley, the goat gland surgeon. Early 20th century America was truly a golden age of medical nonsense. Radio was new. People were obsessed with masculinity, virility, and male vigor. Right in the middle of that cultural anxiety, John R. Brinkley shows up. He called himself Dr. Brinkley, though his credentials were, let's say, creative. His big idea? If your manhood wasn't what it used to be, he would surgically implant goat testicles into your scrotum. Yes. Really. He claimed goats were extremely virile, full of energy, therefore their glands would recharge human men. He opened clinics. He built a whole brand. During surgeries, he'd literally sew bits of goat testicle into the patient's body and declare them rejuvenated. Sometimes the tissue just rotted. Sometimes infection set in. Sometimes the patient died. But Brinkley had the one thing every good quack needs: marketing. He bought a powerful radio station and turned himself into a celebrity doctor. On the air, he took call-in questions, diagnosed people over the radio, advertised his operations and mail-order drugs, sold dreams of youth and masculinity to lonely, insecure men all over the country. When patients died, it was always already too sick complications, unrelated health issues. When surgeries worked, he loudly paraded those stories as proof his methods were brilliant. He became incredibly rich. Doctors complained. Eventually, authorities went after his license. But by then, hundreds of patients had already been cut open, stitched up, and left with infections, chronic pain, impotence, or an early grave. It's one of the purest examples of weaponized insecurity in medical history. You feel less of a man? I will literally sew an animal's organs into you. But our next doctor didn't attack people's pride. He attacked their bodies piece by piece, in the name of curing their minds. Number 3. Dr. Henry Cotton, surgery for the soul. Now, we enter the world of early 20th century psychiatry, a place where desperate families sent relatives in the hope that doctors could fix what nobody understood. Standing at the center of one of its darkest chapters is Dr. Henry Cotton, the medical superintendent of Trenton State Hospital in New Jersey. Cotton had a theory. Mental illness was caused by hidden infections in the body. Bad teeth, infected tonsils, diseased intestines, all secretly poisoning the brain. On paper, not the worst hypothesis for 1910. In practice, it became a horror story. Cotton believed that if you remove the source of infection, you could cure insanity. So he started operating a lot. He pulled patients' teeth. Then, if that didn't work, he moved on to tonsils, sinuses, stomachs, colons, ovaries, testicles, spleens. If a patient didn't improve after one surgery, he'd just keep removing parts. These weren't small cosmetic procedures. This was major, risky surgery in an age before antibiotics, on already fragile, malnourished, institutionalized people who often couldn't consent. His reported success rate was high because he considered many deaths proof that the infections had been severe. Meanwhile, critics who pointed out the mortality numbers were brushed off as not understanding his genius. Imagine being a patient. You're depressed, anxious, psychotic, or just different. Your family, desperate, sends you to this elite doctor. You wake up missing teeth, then another operation, then another. You get weaker and weaker, while Cotton walks through the ward, proud of his innovative treatments. Even after concerns were raised, he kept going for years. Hundreds of lives were permanently altered or ended, not by disease, but by a man so in love with his own theory, that he turned people into scientific experiments. If Cotton carved up the body to fix the mind, our next doctor skipped the middleman and went straight for the brain itself, with a tool that belongs in a kitchen drawer. Number 2. Walter Freeman, the ice pick lobotomist. Welcome to mid-20th century America, where one man decided that the solution to complex mental illness was a few quick stabs behind the eye. Walter Freeman was a neurologist with a flair for showmanship. He didn't invent lobotomy, but he made it fast, cheap, and horrifyingly popular. The original lobotomy was already controversial. Surgeons drilled into the skull, cut connections in the frontal lobes, hoping to calm severe mental illness. Freeman thought that was too slow, so he developed the transorbital lobotomy, which worked like this. Take an instrument resembling an ice pick, slide it under the eyelid along the top of the eye, hammer it through the thin bone at the back of the eye socket with a mallet. Wiggle it around to sever brain connections. Repeat on the other side. No. Seriously. Sometimes this was done under only local anesthesia or even after a simple electric shock to relax the patient. He performed this on adults with severe psychosis, people with depression or anxiety, prisoners, war veterans, and even children and teenagers whose parents were told they were difficult. Freeman hit the road in a van he nicknamed his lobotomobile, traveling from hospital to hospital, performing dozens of lobotomies a day, often posing for proud photographs afterward. smiling with his tools, standing over rows of barely conscious patients. To hospital administrators, he was a miracle. Wards became quiet, problem patients became docile, beds freed up. To families, at first, he sold hope. Your loved one will finally be calm. The voices will stop. The rage will end. Sometimes patients did get calmer because he had destroyed part of their brain. Others were left incontinent, unable to speak properly, childlike, or completely apathetic. And many died outright from hemorrhage, seizures, or infection. Yet, for years, Freeman toured like a celebrity surgeon, talking about his revolutionary method. Hospitals let him operate in side rooms, lecture halls, practically in bulk. It took thousands of ruined lives and rising criticism before lobotomy finally fell out of fashion. Of all the people on this list, Walter Freeman might be the one who best shows how dangerous it is when charisma, authority, and junk science combine. But there is one more doctor whose damage is even bigger, not because of what he did with his hands, but because of what he did with a paper. Number 1. Andrew Wakefield, the study that won't die. Our final entry isn't some Victorian showman or medieval barber. He's a modern physician who wore real lab coats, spoke at conferences, and published in a prestigious medical journal. And his work is still killing people. In 1998, British doctor Andrew Wakefield published a paper claiming there might be a link between the MMR vaccine measles, mumps, rubella, and autism. Parents were already afraid of anything that might harm their children. The media loved a controversy. Headlines exploded. Child vaccine linked to autism. Is the MMR shot safe? Wakefield presented himself as a brave whistleblower, standing up to Big Pharma. There was just one problem. The study was a disaster. Tiny sample size, cherry-picked data, no solid evidence of causation, ethical violations, and how children were treated. Over the next few years, investigators uncovered that he had financial conflicts of interest, he was being paid by lawyers suing vaccine manufacturers, he was developing his own rival vaccine. Eventually, the journal fully retracted the paper. Wakefield lost his medical license. End of story. Right? Not even close. The damage was already done. Parents around the world had seen the headlines, felt their stomachs drop, and said, what if he's right? Vaccination rates declined in the UK, declined in parts of Europe, declined in communities in the US and elsewhere. Measles, a disease we had on the ropes, started coming back. Kids went blind, developed brain swelling, and died. Doctors tried to correct the record. Huge studies with hundreds of thousands of children showed no link between vaccines and autism. But fear spreads faster than data. Wakefield became a hero to anti-vaccine movements, attending rallies, documentaries, and talk shows, while outbreaks kept happening in places where vaccination rates dropped. Unlike William Bailey with his Radium water, Wakefield didn't just harm the people who directly bought his product. He created a global myth that still convinces parents to skip life-saving shots for their kids. Every time a child ends up in intensive care with measles, or an immunocompromised person catches a preventable disease because the people around them weren't vaccinated, that's part of Wakefield's legacy. He may never cut anyone open, never stitch goat glands into anyone, never starved a patient to death. But by turning vaccines into a boogeyman, he arguably became one of the deadliest quack doctors in history. Final thoughts. Why these quacks still matter. From barber-surgeons draining you like a wine barrel, to tonic salesmen bottling addiction, from radioactive water and starvation spas, to goat gland surgery, organ removal psychiatry, ice pick lobotomies, and a fraud who unleashed a global anti-vaccine movement. There's a pattern. The most dangerous quack doctors are almost never the cartoon villains in dark alleys or the obvious conmen in shabby tents. They're the ones who look legitimate. They use technical language, wear nice coats, sound confident, attack anyone who questions them, and promise simple answers to complex problems. Real medicine is messy, slow, and full of "we're not sure yet." Quack medicine is clean, confident, and always on sale. Trust me, don't trust them. I have the cure they're hiding from you. So the next time someone comes along with a miracle detox, a secret protocol, or a natural cure that just happens to cost a lot of money. Remember Linda Hazard, John Brinkley, Walter Freeman, Andrew Wakefield, and the trail of bodies they left behind. Skepticism isn't cynicism, it's self-defense. If you want more dark corners of history and medicine, check out our other videos on the deadliest plagues in human history, the worst punishments in human history, and the most terrifying siege weapons ever built. Which doctor on this list horrified you the most? And have you seen any modern quacks using the same tricks today? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. And maybe, just maybe, double check what's in your miracle supplements before you drink them.